Recording. Welcome to this celebration of Michael Asante's life. So how did a young man, without any necessarily special connections or ins inside of the technology community, mold himself into one of the most influential people in the cyber industry?
My name is Tyson Metters, and I'm a U.S. Navy cyber warfare engineer from what is today called the Navy Cyber Warfare Development Group. Admiral James Bond Stockdale, the Medal of Honor winner and hero of the Vietnam War, said, "Every great leader I've known has been a great teacher, able to give those around him a sense of perspective and set the moral, social, and motivational climate among them." I begin with this quote because Michael is often, and rightly, celebrated for his qualities as a thinker, for his cutting-edge understanding of cyber-physical systems, and for his accomplishments as a result of those qualities. Mike gave the Navy, the nation, and indeed the world a set of insights that make us safer and more secure. For all those things, we celebrate him. But I, and many other junior officers from services beyond just the Navy, knew another aspect of Mike. For me, and I believe for many others in this room tonight, it was the most important. Mike was a teacher. Mike's teachership is ever more remarkable because it occurred within a field where classification builds compartments, complexity impedes comprehension, and information is hoarded because it is power. And the rank of the messenger often determines both the visibility and credibility of the message. Amazingly, Mike transcended all of these limitations. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I first met Mike in 2015. It was an event similar to this, where I was up on stage making a humble little Navy presentation to an audience from elsewhere in government and industry. Mike was the first to greet me at the end of their talk, right there at the bottom of the stairs. "My name's Michael, and I was in the Navy once too." I think it may have been Tim Roxy or somebody else nearby who whispered in my ear mid-handshake, "Mike did the Aurora generator experiment." At that, I instantly flashed back to being huddled around a computer watching grainy, early CNN video footage on the internet with my classmates at the U.S. Naval Academy in the fall of 2007, when Project Aurora became public, garnered no small amount of media attention, and subsequently sparked the imaginations of an entire generation of Navy, Air Force, Army, and Marine Corps officers. For a generation of cyber-inclined midshipmen and cadets around the country, we saw this as our Sputnik moment. Within the Navy, Mike's cybersecurity accomplishments have been echoed in the establishment of Fleet Cyber Command, Navy-wide initiatives such as Task Force Cyber Awakening, and the establishment of the Navy's newest officer community, Cyber Warfare Engineers. By the Stockdale measure of leadership, Mike Asante has proven to be one of America's greatest cyber leaders, and I would personally name him America's first great cyber hero.
When I started my company more than 17 years ago, it was at a time when both Michael and I were developing a keen interest in the electric utility sector, a space that largely defined both of our careers. I don't think they would have focused on the electric utility sector if it hadn't been for Michael. Michael's professional accomplishments were many, but those achievements were not what defined him. What made those accomplishments possible is who he was as a human being. If you work with Michael, you knew he had your back. If you work for Michael, he had your back. But not because it was expected of you, but it was because of the culture that he fostered. At Vigilance, Michael built a loyal team that followed him because he followed them. He knew how to listen. He knew how to pause. He knew how to gather the best ideas from everyone around him. He knew how to push people to voice their dissent to get to the right answer. Michael's always cared more about getting it right than being right. Michael has kept his team focused on the objectives. When facing any adversity or challenge at work, he always did the same thing. He sat back, he paused, he figured out how to work the team to move past it. No obstacle was too large. No goal was too audacious. Mike was never deterred. No was never an option for Michael. He plowed through these obstacles with a calming temperament and a well-thought strategy. The way he treated work was exactly the same way he treated his life.
And this team that he put together was so interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the attributes of this team. So he was very deliberate in who he chose to work with, of how we got involved together there at Idaho National Lab. So he wanted to avoid creating an echo chamber at all costs, and so he deliberately went out and found people who would disrupt his own thinking. It's very rare to find leaders who will do that. He went out of his way to find the lowest man on the totem pole from places that usually people don't listen to, people who don't necessarily have PhDs or have some highfalutin MBA behind their name. He spent time talking to so many people from different professions about how infrastructure was important and things that they had seen and negative things that had impacted that infrastructure. We began a roadshow in Washington, D.C. to try to get funding to get this thing done. We wanted to do a big test, and we wanted to make something go boom. And we walk into the Pentagon in one meeting. This was a 3-star general who was responsible for military base protection. We had met him through the office of the CIO of the DoD. And we're sitting in this, and as you're typical in sales mode, I'm a technology sales guy, so what you do is you just throw things against the wall until they stick, right? So we're in sales mode, we're in there in the presentation, we're talking through, hey, you know, it's really important you protect your military base infrastructure, and if you don't, bad things can happen. This guy with 3 stars on his uniform, he looks across the table and says, "You're all a bunch of wet behind the ear geeks. You're lucky I even took this meeting. You know, when you want to go kinetic with people, you let me know, and I got missiles that'll handle that." If you've ever seen that look on Mike's face of just the sheer determination, right? The steely determination of a guy who's like, I'm going to show these people, and we're going to make them look foolish.
And then in 2007, Mike sent me a paper that he was working on, and I remember it so crystally. He's like, Christina gave me the weekend off. She said, I've focused, I've spent 48 hours writing this paper. Can you take a look at it? And it was a paper that linked technology to something else that you could touch and feel. And the paper was the 4 things that Roman aqueducts can teach us about securing the power grid. I know many of you have read that paper. It's still a classic. And it actually, Mike did an incredible amount of research on the Roman aqueducts and how they built that and related it to the electric grid. So anyway, I made a bunch of these changes, and I really felt bad. I'm like, gosh, he just sent this thing to me for me to look at it, and I've just completely edited it all over the place. And I remember I called him and said, Mike, I am really sorry about this. But you know, Mike being Mike, he said, let me look at it. He looked at it, and he accepted all of the red ink that I had put on there. I mean, he enthusiastically accepted it. And he even sent it back to me a couple more times. We edited it. Mike sent it off to Bob Bragdon to publish it in CSO magazine. And when it was published, I see it come out, and Mike had listed me as a co-author on the paper. And I was stunned because I wasn't a co-author. I was an editor. And I said, Mike, you know, I'm so happy that you did that, but you know, I wasn't really the co-author. And he goes, no, you deserve as much credit for this as I do. And I kept thinking, that was my first, I thought, what a great man this guy is. Some of you will remember this and some of you won't, but let's step back again to 2008. The NERC Critical Infrastructure Protection Standards, the SIP standards, had just been published, and everyone in the industry was trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean to me? So that spring, Mike put together they called it a self-certification survey for the SIP standards for the entire utility industry. And really the intent was to give Mike kind of a baseline of what are the critical assets, what do the critical asset footprint look like in North America? And this is really key to this piece of the story. It was important because it made Mike infamous, and I know Christina remembers this because it was a turning point in Mike's career at NERC. And why did it make him infamous? The survey, I don't mean to get too technical here, but the survey required electric utilities to self-identify their own critical assets and their critical cyber assets. So the results, I would say, were a bit disappointing. 29% of generation owners and operators reported as having one critical cyber asset, or one critical asset. And transmission owners, less than 62% identified a critical asset. So think about this for a second. You have the entire utility industry in North America, and like 25% of them are saying we have a critical cyber asset. To the uncritical eye, this might look like good news, but Mike did not have an uncritical eye. He had an eye for detail. And on April 7th, Mike wrote a letter to the entire electric utility industry in North America calling BS. He goes, no, this will not stand. So here's the reason I tell this story. Mike knew that he was going to become an object of aggression when he did that. He knew that the industry tribalism was going to attack him. But he did it because it was the right thing to do. That was what Michael Asante, one man saying to the entire electric utility industry in North America, you're not going to get away with this. You have to do the right thing. You know, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money. Society and the safety of society is at stake here. You're going to have to answer this the right way.
He was the kind of teacher who was passionate, but he was patient. So he was pushy, but he allowed you time, and he was challenging but encouraging. He was authoritative, but he was never arrogant. I can't remember a time. And the most important thing about him as a teacher, the thing I look for all the time, is he was a person who cared deeply about the audience getting something of value. He helped create something called Fast Track, which was a way for people who are talented or who have a high aptitude for cybersecurity to discover that aptitude and get trained at a very high level. And the reason, and we got 26 governors to help announce it. Last year, 13,000 college kids tried out for it, and 100 of them are actually going through advanced training right now to develop those skills. And the reason this is relevant to today is they each get to choose a specialty. They can go into forensics, they can go into industrial control systems, they can go into pen testing, they can go into a field they choose. These are, remember, 100 people out of 13,600 or 13,300, so it's not everybody. Those who choose the ICS as their path are going to be named Asante somethings. They're Asante, Chris is going to have to help. We're going to have to figure this out together. Asante scholars or Asante professionals or Asante experts, but they're going to be known as people who are so good that if you get to hire one of them, you got lucky.
So for those of you who are looking for guidance about how to do big things and really make a difference in cybersecurity, here are the key lessons that I take away from Mike's life. Before worrying about being a world-class expert, be a good human being. Search for information among the lowest folks in the organization. Look for those people who are beaten down and help lift them up. Assemble a diverse team. Give people enough freedom to look for different ways to approach a problem. Take the heat for the team, allowing folks to focus on the real work and avoid the bureaucratic madness. Don't use information as a weapon against those who are critical of your approach, but try to build bridges to make everyone a winner. Never stop trying to make a difference, no matter what. There's not a day that goes by that I am not personally inspired by Mike. I've received many accolades in life, but one of the greatest ones is that Mike called me a friend, and Mike helped me be better, and for that I'm grateful.